3 ways to become a more influential leader. Being a leader is about many things, but one of the most important traits you should possess is the ability to influence, inspire, and encourage your team. When you can do this, you can bring the very best work out of each individual, and thereby help the collective team to achieve amazing things. So how do you influence and inspire as a leader? In this presentation, we're going to explore the answer. 1. Give your team projects. Instead of micromanaging every single tiny decision in your organization, the best leader is someone who provides a rough outline of what needs to be accomplished, and then allows the team to complete that themselves. Why? Firstly, this means that you don't need to be in 100 places at once, micromanaging every fine detail. At the same time, this lets the team that you have paid do their very best work, rather than having you stifle all creativity out of them. But most importantly, giving your team ownership over a task helps them to feel more in control over what they are doing and makes the task more intrinsically rewarding. 2. Lead by example. There are few things more frustrating than a leader that does not lead by example. How frustrating is it to be told by your boss to hand in work on time, and that tardiness is never excusable, only for them to then not get around to looking after that work for weeks? When you are a leader, you need to set the tone for your office, and you need to set a blueprint for how others will behave. In a crisis, your team is going to look to you for how to respond. If you are panicking and shouting, then they are unlikely to remain productive. But if you can calmly continue with your work, then chances are that so can they. Likewise, if you want them to wear a smart shirt into the office, then you need to as well. 3. Provide credit where it is due. Providing incentives for completed work has been shown in studies not to work. This has the unfortunate effect of making people focus too much on the end goal, thus reducing creative thinking and problem solving. But what you should do is ensure that the contributions of each team member are felt and that they feel rewarded through credit. When you do this, you will create a situation where everyone wants to do their very best work because they know it is valued and seen. 5 leadership skills to help your business grow. Want to be a better leader and take your business to newer heights? Then listen up and we'll go over 5 crucial skills that are necessary for any leader. Empathizing. One of the single most important skills for any leader is the ability to empathize with their staff. In particular, this means not judging, and it means assuming that each member of your team is their own person with their own things going on. In other words, if someone is performing subpar today, you don't assume they're simply lazy. Instead, you ask what your organization could do differently to help them feel motivated. Or you ask what could be going on in their life that's making them unhappy. Explaining. Talking about goals can help your staff to an extent when done the right way. Rather than giving staff their own targets to reach and then rewarding them for hitting them, you should instead share your goals and the company's goals in order to explain to them why you are making the decisions you are making and what the end vision is for the team. This immediately gets your workers on side, as it shows them that you trust them. At the same time, by letting your team know what they're trying to achieve, they will be freer to come up with their own effective ways of meeting those tasks and give them the freedom to make some of their own decisions and use their intuition rather than always deferring to you for the next step. Ultimately, this means less communication overhead, less time wasted, and better productivity. Commanding attention. A great leader should be someone who is dynamic, engaging, charismatic, and charming. While this isn't something that everyone is born with, the good news is that it can be learned. Attending acting classes, public speaking classes, and even stand-up comedy clubs can be a great way to develop those skills. Management. Often the terms leadership and management go hand in hand. While both are related though, they are different skills. As a manager, your job is to manage resources and staff in order to place them in the most productive position to help reach targets and goals. Learn to do this if you want to be the best kind of leader. Bravery. Finally, a great leader needs to be brave and courageous. Your job as leader is to take responsibility, to make quick decisions, and to sacrifice your own reputation if it means looking after your team. This all takes courage and bravery, but it will pay off in the huge amount of loyalty and respect you command among your team. All leaders are readers. 5 must-have books to read to become a better leader. Nearly every major CEO and leader reports that they read a large number of books every day, from Bill Gates to Elon Musk. Doing so allows them to further develop their leadership skills and to develop a greater understanding of their role and the way they can get the best out of others. While there is an unlimited number of books that the best leaders should read, the 5 I'm about to share with you will offer a great place to start. These books are deeply impactful and can make you a better leader than 99% of managers all on their own. Deep Work by Cal Newport. This is a book all about focusing hard on a given subject matter. It shows how uninterrupted work produces the best results in terms of quality and quantity. This is eye-opening for many managers who are used to constantly pestering their staff with emails, messages on Slack, and pointless meetings. The Power of When by Michael Bruce. Another book that looks at how to get the most out of staff, this time focusing on how different people work better at different times of day based on their chronotype. It shows how this can correlate with health and even personality types. It's fascinating reading, as this kind of research is likely to turn our approach to management on its head. So stay ahead of the curve by reading this one. The Personal MBA by Josh Kaufman. The Personal MBA is a business masterclass in a single book that also incorporates many concepts that relate directly to management and leadership. This includes understanding group dynamics, motivation, and more. Start with Why by Simon Sinek. This is an extremely powerful book that discusses the importance of understanding the why behind any business. This is what has always set the superstar businesses like Apple apart from the rest. An understanding of what it is they are all about. This can help you to create a better product and brand, and to better motivate your team. Super Freakonomics by Stephen J. Dubner. This is a book on the impact of economic theory on the world. It shows how one decision can alter the behavior of countless people to change outcomes in huge ways. Understanding this fascinating and entertaining book will make you better at every aspect of business, and especially leadership. How to influence others to take action. Your first job as a leader should be to motivate your team and get them to work as well as possible. If you can't accomplish that much, then you'll find that your office is not productive and that you end up going nowhere fast. Fortunately, a lot of research has been done into the nature of motivation, particularly in the office, and it sheds useful light on how we should go about motivating workers to get the most out of them. By listening to this presentation, you'll learn precisely what you need to do in order to motivate your team to work their very best. Carrot or stick? The old question here was always carrot or stick, but it turns out that the correct answer is, in fact, neither. When getting someone to perform unchallenging and repetitive labor, like filing envelopes, the carrot and stick approach has been shown to work well. However, countless studies have shown that when you want your team to work creatively and use their intuition, the exact opposite is actually true. Gamification, incentivizing, or threatening will all create a kind of tunnel vision in staff that can actually stifle innovation and creativity, as well as reducing their enjoyment of the work they do. So what do you do to motivate your staff? It turns out that the best way to get your staff to work well is to make them feel invested in their work. Give them some kind of ownership over what they produce. Give them the freedom to add their own ideas and solutions. And you will find that your staff end up working harder as of their own accord. This is why the free time at Google is so successful. This gives employees the chance to work on projects that they are interested in, and often it yields the best results. Likewise, when you take an existing task that needs completing, and you give someone the control and freedom they need to decide how that work gets done, you'll find you instantly increase their emotional investment in the task. Instead of controlling every action a person takes, you are giving them ownership of a project or a department. Now it is in their best interest to be productive, and they can decide how they want to go about achieving those goals, which is far more creatively rewarding. How to speak so others will listen. As a leader, one of your first challenges is to learn to command attention, to speak so that others will listen. After all, How can you instruct your team and get the best out of them if they won't listen to what you have to say in the first place? In this presentation, we'll discuss how to command attention and respect as a communicator and a leader. Believe in what you're saying. The number one thing that makes someone appear more charismatic is passion. If you genuinely believe in what you're saying, this will light up your entire face and body. You will speak not only with your mouth, but also your gestures and your eyes. When you do this, you convey that what you are saying is important and exciting, and you instantly command attention. Try to tap into the emotion behind what you are saying. Why is this important? Why are you excited? Anxious? Angry? Another way to do this is to relate the story to something that matters to you or your team personally. In other words, take a narrative structure and weave a story. Speak less. Of course, you can't always channel this kind of emotion. If what you're saying isn't that important, then you won't be able to sell it as though it is. So what's the answer? Simple. Don't say it. Talk a little less, and you'll find that the times you do speak up are the ones that are far more important. By doing this, you will create a situation in which people want to listen to you, in which they want to know what you have to say. Use pauses. Likewise, when speaking, you shouldn't be afraid to use long pauses and moments of silence. These silences help to add a dynamic flow to what you are saying, and they encourage your audience to really listen to what you are saying. Being quiet can be a great way to build suspense and interest when telling a story, and it can be a great way to demonstrate confidence. Most of us are too afraid to be silent, as we think we'll lose our audience. Therefore, if you have the confidence to stand at the front of the office and not say anything, your staff will know that you aren't desperately trying to seek approval. Suddenly, what you have to say gains that much more importance and gravitas. How to stop blaming others and take ownership of your actions. The worst kind of leader is the leader who doesn't take responsibility. After all, being a leader is all about taking responsibility. Unfortunately, this is something that many people still don't understand, and as such, they end up making their office less productive and a more stressful place to be. In this presentation, we'll look at how to flip this on its head and to become the fearless leader your team needs you to be. The blame game. The manager's job very often is to make sure that their team are meeting specific targets at given points in time. This is a way that they can demonstrate the effectiveness of their work and that their efforts can be measured. But what happens when they don't reach those targets? Bad leaders will now turn on their staff and actively blame them for being ineffective. They do this in order to save face and to avoid getting in trouble with their superiors and generally pass the buck. But it also happens to be the number one way to instantly reduce the productivity of your team. Why? Firstly, it means that your team now feels stressed knowing that they might get it in the neck for their work. The result is that they won't take as many creative risks, and they generally won't do their best work. They'll likely also feel resentful that their work has gone this way. The other issue is that it makes you seem like a weaker leader. After all, if you can't take responsibility when things go badly, you also should get no credit when things go well. So what are you doing? Your job is to then simply suck it up and to take the flak when things go wrong. Recognize that this is your team, and if they aren't working to the best of their ability, then that is on you. Decisions. The other sign of someone who likes to shrink responsibility is that they refuse to make decisions. As soon as you make a decision, you take full responsibility and you commit to a certain path of action. By avoiding making decisions, you can avoid taking this responsibility, but you also prevent your team from doing anything effective or useful. Take the responsibility, make the call, and take action. This can take a while to get used to, but it's simply a matter of changing your thinking. Your job is to be the person who makes the call and takes the flak. The 3 most common leadership mistakes. Being a leader means knowing how to protect your team so they are able to perform at their very best. Your job is to provide guidance, inspiration, and a safety net, which in turn will inspire them to take action and to contribute the best effort they are capable of. When everyone gives their very best, the team works. But while that's what good leadership is really about, this is something that is lost on many people. Unfortunately, a large proportion of leaders have the completely wrong idea about what being a leader actually means. As such, they can end up causing more harm than good. In this presentation, I'll be discussing 3 of the most common leadership mistakes that you can learn from and avoid. 1. Shouting. Being a leader does not mean blustering and yelling until you get your point across. It does not mean reprimanding dissidents in front of the entire office. Remember that being a leader does not mean you're in charge of someone or that you have the right to admonish them. Rather, it means that they have agreed to follow your instruction in this specific context. Don't let the power go to your head. A good leader doesn't need to shout to get their point across. And if things aren't working out, you simply part ways on good terms. 2. Threatening. Similarly, many leaders take the unfortunate approach of trying to terrify their followers into getting work done. They might point out that they have the power to terminate that person's employment, or they might threaten them with more work. There are lots of reasons that this doesn't work. For one, it means that those team members are going to be put in the wrong state of mind and not feel particularly like team players. Additionally, this kind of stress can actually dampen creativity due to chemical changes in the brain. 3. Micromanaging. A manager who focuses on every single detail of the work being done and attempts to wrestle control away from their team will only end up making those team members feel undervalued, while removing any creatively rewarding aspects of the work. Not only that, but they will be wasting the talents of someone hired to do that job specifically, and they will be wasting a lot of time doing work and having conversations that could have been avoided. Why emotional intelligence is crucial for effective leadership. What is the most important feature of a great leader? Is it the ability to stay calm in a crisis, to bark orders, or to command respect and fear? No. The most important feature of a leader is to understand people. This comes down to emotional intelligence, the ability to understand, predict, and ultimately influence the emotions of others. There are many situations where this plays out. For example, when someone fails to do their best work repeatedly, you might be tempted to accuse them of being lazy. The emotionally intelligent manager, however, will understand that this person might be having problems at home, or they might simply not find the work they're doing rewarding. So you should ask, how can you make that work more intrinsically rewarding for them? This will get much better results than just storming and shouting. Likewise, if you're unhappy with something a staff member did, your job as an emotionally intelligent individual is to instruct them on what they did wrong, but in such a way as to not upset them or to make them feel undervalued. How to take control in an emotionally intelligent way. We've already seen that using the threat of punishment is an ineffective way to get staff to work harder, and that it will only cause them to be less productive and inventive in the way they approach tasks. But if coming down hard on your staff isn't the answer, then how do you compose yourself to create the image of a leader? The same goes for reprimanding staff. If you shout at them publicly, you will only create enemies and resentment. Instead, demonstrate that you're unhappy by talking through with them in private what they are doing well and how they can stand to improve. Make sure you make them feel valued and make sure they know that the issues are things that can be fixed. In a crisis, emotional intelligence becomes equally important. Perhaps the most important thing here is to remain calm and confident. You might not realize it, but you will set the thermostat, as it were, for the mood of the office. If you panic, then the office will panic. Whereas if you're calm and collected, so too will be the rest of the office. This is another form of emotional intelligence, the ability to take control over your own emotions and therefore to react in the best way possible. Why empathy is the most important leadership trait. If there is one thing that needs to change about the way most people approach leadership, it's their understanding of the role of empathy. You see, many people fail to recognize that there is a role for empathy after all. Their assumption is that they can produce great work through discipline, incentives, and organization. In fact, though, the main difference between a well-liked and respected leader and one who is completely ineffectual is their ability to empathize with staff and to understand them. Trying to get someone to do as they are told because you said so is a recipe for disaster. So too is reprimanding someone because they have failed to complete their work properly. While they might toe the line for fear of being fired, this won't create workplace satisfaction, and it will likely cause them to produce subpar work. Moreover, they might well start looking for alternative employment. When someone fails to get work in on time, then ask yourself, could something be going on in their personal lives that has prevented them from completing their best work? Did you provide clear instructions and enough time? Why isn't the work inherently motivating for them? Would they like to somehow change the way they are working? By answering these questions, you can address the root of the problem. Instead of feeling watched and bullied, the person now feels supported and encouraged. Immediately, this leaves them wanting to do better work for the organization that is looking after them. But it also means that you can work together in order to come up with a great solution that will help them to do their very best work every day. Now, you might give them more ownership or creative control over their work. You might give them a little bit of time off, or you might look into flexible working hours. Whatever the case, stopping to listen to your staff has now helped them to do the very best work they can do. That's far better than yelling at them so that they bury their head in the sand. This can have profound impacts on the productivity of one member of staff and on their relationship with you. But now if you multiply that across countless office workers, you can completely transform the culture and work environment for the better. Learn to listen and to care. Why every manager should be trained in emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, EQ, is a quotient used to measure how in touch someone is with their emotions. This is fairly abstract though, and there are methodological problems with measuring it, even more so than with IQ. But while that's true, it is also widely accepted that EQ is something that exists, and that is extremely important when it comes to taking charge and instructing your followers. It's something that every manager should be trained in. To illustrate this point, consider a real-life example of someone who was put in a leadership with poor emotional intelligence. This person was an editor whose job it was to read through writing from journalists and then to make corrections ready to print. If the corrections were extensive, they had the option to send the work back to the person who wrote it. For their very first job, the editor received a large article that a journalist had written over the course of several days. The writer was proud of this work and had worked extremely hard. But the editor found several faults with the formatting, the grammar, and more. So what they did was to make a public example of the writer. They pulled them up to their desk in a crowded office and then explained loudly to the entire team how they had failed to listen to the writer's guidelines, how they had used the wrong capitalization in their title, and how they had failed to properly link out to other websites, and how they had clearly missed several typos. They made no mention of the many positive points of the article, and they were rude about the overall quality. The result? The writer felt completely underappreciated for the work they had put in. Not only that, but they felt humiliated in front of their coworkers. And they felt especially aggravated that this was coming from someone brand new that they had never worked with before. The next time that the writer had to deliver a similar piece of work, they spent significantly less time and effort on it, and therefore delivered an inferior product. Not only that, but they took much longer than necessary to correct the mistakes. How could this have been handled? The editor could have spoken to the writer privately. They could have started by thanking the writer for their work and pointed out some of the qualities that made it a great piece of work. Then they could have mentioned that there were a couple of small issues, and if that they could be corrected as soon as possible, then the work would be good to go. The difference here is huge, and over the course of countless interactions and countless months, it can completely transform a workplace. EQ is critical to leadership.